Individual investors tend to make the worst decisions in terms of the timing. So, yes, sell after a 1,200-point decline in the last week.
All right.
That's great.
She never has an opinion on anything. We love you, Dagen. Hillary Clinton changing her stance on the email scandal that has haunted her campaign thus far. The 2016 Democratic frontrunner admitting yesterday her use of personal email while Secretary of State was a mistake. Take a listen.
I know people have raised questions about my email use as Secretary of State, and I understand why. I get it. So here's what I want the American people to know. My use of personal email was allowed by the State Department. It clearly wasn't the best choice. I should have used two emails, one personal, one for work. And I take responsibility for that decision.
No longer a joking matter, it appears. Joining me now is Fox News' Julie Roginski, along with Hadley Manning. She's Independent Women's Forum Director of Health Policy. All right, Julie. So wasn't it just last week? I remember she joked about wiping with a cloth the server clean, and everybody said, really? This is just not a laughing matter. Is she changing her tone?
Absolutely. And finally, I mean, this is like longer than gestation period.
What do you think drove her?
I think what drove it is the fact that people who are clearly not in the bunker with her kept saying here and elsewhere, get out front on this issue. Concede that you made a mistake so you can move on.
What do you think about this tactic, saying it wasn't the best choice?
I was hoping and advocated weeks ago that she do this. Concede that you screwed up so you can start talking about other issues. It's the only way to move on from this. The more you joke about it, the more you say this isn't a big deal. It's a big deal. So the fact that she was kind of poo-pooing it was a huge mistake politically.
All right, Hadley, I just wonder how much of this is the talk about Joe Biden entering the race. Is she feeling the pressure from Plan B by the Democrats?
Sure. I think that's definitely a part of it. She's looking at polling numbers from July to August. She took a big hit, and Senator Bernie Sanders was gaining on her. I think she's a smart politician. She's responding to the need to really focus on this as a serious issue instead of a laughing matter. So I agree with Julie. It's a smart move on Clinton's part.
All right, Hadley and Julie, I want you to stand by while we look at this. Univision anchor Jorge Ramos was ejected from that news conference Tuesday following a fiery exchange with Donald Trump over his views on U.S. immigration. Ramos appeared on Fox News' The Kelly File last night to share his side of the story. Take a listen.
Clearly, Donald Trump didn't like my question, and then that's what happened. He tried to silence me, and in this country, you cannot do that. I'm a U.S. citizen, I'm an immigrant, I'm a reporter. I have the right in this country to ask any question I want to whomever I want.
All right, so there's a lot of conflicting opinions on who is in the wrong here. Was it Trump? Was it Ramos? We had Alberto Gonzalez, former U.S. Attorney General, on the show yesterday, Julie. He suggested that both were in the wrong at that news conference, that the journalist has held himself in higher regard in his long career, and he maybe had a misstep. But Donald Trump went to extremes as well. Where do you stand?
Well, let's take emotion out of this and sort of who's right, who's wrong. Let's look at the numbers. 27% of the Hispanic vote is exactly what Mitt Romney got in 2012. If the GOP doesn't do better than that, they will never win another national election. The math is not there for them. They're not going to get 100% of the white vote to offset where they're losing among non-white voters. So whether Donald Trump was in the right or whether Ramos was in the right, this is the face of the Republican Party right now. He's toxic for whoever the Republican nominee is going to be eventually.
I would agree that both people are in the wrong. I think you look at the video footage from the press conference, and there has to be some degree of order. Of course, as a journalist, it's your job to ask the tough questions, and I respect Jorge Ramos for doing that, but he was out of order. He was interrupting another reporter. On the other hand, Trump didn't handle this very well. He wasn't polite. This isn't his style to be polite. It's his style to be inflammatory. And Julie's right to point out that he's got a negative 51% favorability rating right now with Hispanics. That's not going to bode well in a general election if the GOP nominates Trump. So he's got to pay attention to the unfortunate part of life in D.C. is that perception can become reality. And right now his ratings with Hispanics aren't perceived well.
Can I actually go a step further? Even if he's not the Republican nominee, the fact that you have Republican audiences applauding this kind of behavior is going to redound on whoever the Republican nominee is going to be. He is destructive for the Republican Party.
I've got to get Tony to respond to that. Tony, hold on. Tony in here because you look mildly entertained by this conversation. Your thoughts?
How could you not be entertained by this conversation? You know, both of them are wrong, but the whole thing is irrelevant. You can't be the president. I'm Republican. I'm talking my book, but you can't be the president of the country and kick people out and be rude to both gals, Hispanics, or anybody that doesn't agree with you on the spot. On the other side,
but why couldn't he have just? And this is not my argument. This is what I've heard people saying. Some people were saying, why couldn't Donald Trump have just said, you know what, hold on, it's not your turn. I will address that question.
Because he's Donald Trump. Because he's Donald Trump, and he likes to insult. I mean, he likes to insult people.
But the guy, I don't think the reporter would have stopped. As a public speaker, I do a lot of public talks. Sometimes you get somebody that is just counter to you.
He doesn't have a long history of being rude and interrupting people at press conferences.
But this is a personal issue for Jorge Ramos, a very personal issue, number one. But I think that that exchange there is about who Donald Trump is. He says and does things. He is very incendiary. But it feeds his base supporter, and he doesn't care about anybody else.
And you know,
that's the issue.
You know what's interesting for Donald Trump? We're all talking about him this morning.
Yep,
if he had called on Jorge Ramos politely or not treated him that way, we would say something else.
Really quickly, the bigger thing is also a war on the media. He has tapped into the American people hate the media, they hate the opinions, and so he is feeding that too.
Hadley, we have 5 seconds. Last word to you.
Well, I have to push back on something Julie said. Not all Republicans are applauding Trump's style. Not all Republicans are in favor of the way that he's treating Hispanics or women and the way that he talks. So when you look at the favorability ratings of other Republicans, there's a handful that are polling favorably with Hispanics. And the next closest is maybe a -7 rating for the next closest Republican. So Trump is definitely outside of the pack and outside of the data.
All right, Julie Roginski and Hadley Manning, thanks for joining us this morning.